the teacher, the blessed one, the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, law of the word, supreme guide of beings to retain, teacher of gods and humans, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subdue whom the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one, the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, know of the word, supreme guide of beings to retain, teacher of gods and humans, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subdue of whom the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one, the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, know of the word, supreme guide of beings to detain, teacher of gods and humans, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subdue of whom the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. When the supreme among humans you are born in this earth, you paced out 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise then I prostrate. With pure bodies formed supreme and pure, with some motion like golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, we know the best, to you I prostrate. With your supreme signs, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. You are immaculate, the 3 words are not, incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the teacher having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to you, the one gone to darkness I prostrate. The purity which makes one free from attachment, the virtue which frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality, to the Dharma which pacifies I prostrate. Those who are liberated and also show the path to liberation, the holy few qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you, the sublime community intending virtue I prostrate. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, mirage, or flame of a lamp, illusion, a drop of dew or bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain rank of all seeing, subdue the four force, and be delivered from motion of suffering, of aging, sickness, and death. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Yeah, so I'm going to read from page 156, stanzas number 10, once again. This time I'm going to use Tudinjaba's translations for stanza number 10. Number 10, in this Tudinjaba translations, when the perfect gnosis sees that things comes from ignorance are conditioned, nothing will then be objectified, either in terms of arising or destructions. You see the little bit difference in this book. The translation is, when one discerns with precise intuitions what occurs the condition by misknowledge, one does not experience anything, whether created or ceased. So actually it's talking about the point of view from the wisdom realizing emptiness. So from the point of view of the wisdom realizing emptiness, there's nothing objectified as arising or the destructions. There's no coming, no going, no arising, no destructions, no discontinuations, no permanent. In the Buddha Madhukarikas, from the beginning, the homage to the Buddha, Nagarjuna say that. So there's no arising, no disintegrations. no coming and no going. In the Prajnaparamita Sutra, so there is no ignorance, there is no extinction of the ignorance. There is no origin of suffering, there is no suffering, there is no origin of suffering, there is no extinction of origin of suffering and suffering. Yeah. So it's kind of pretty much is talking from the point of view of the wisdom that is meditated equipoise within the emptiness. From that point of view, there is no arising, there's no destruction, there's no coming or going. You know. This is what they're saying here. So now, once we say that from the point of view of the emptiness, there is no arising, there is no destructions. And then another point of view, from the conventional knowledge point of view, from the ordinary perspective, from the language perspective, from the conventional knowledge perspective, yes, there is arising, there is a destructions, there is a coming and there is a going, there is short and tall, and east and west, north and south. So now you may think that, from the emptiness point of view, no arising, no destructions. From the conventional point of view, from the mundane perspective, yes, there is arising and disintegrations. So and then the Nagarjuna is saying that this conventional knowledge and the and emptiness is kind of, so there's no different. There's no different means emptiness is because of this conventional relativities. Relativities happen because the things are devoid of intrinsic nature. So these two, reality, I don't know. Sometimes people use the language overlap. There is no separate, two kind of truth. So there's no separate, different two kind of truth. It is just just the way of looking at, looking at the reality through objectivities, through relativities. So through, so I think through relativity means through comparing, yes, if you try to compare something, you can find arising and destruction, coming and going, east and north, south and east and west, north and south. And in the ultimate objective point of views, there is no objective east, there is no objective west, there is no objective arising, there is no objective destructions. Yeah, so sometimes still is not really satisfying. So are you just leaving them in the terms and in the languages? Then, it's just the information. There's no, there's no change from this understanding. It's just education. Education means information. So simply keep saying repeating the 100 times, 1,000 times. I think there's no really kind of effective changes there. So now what it's really saying is, yes, arising If you, if you construct, if you conceptually, through your language and through your conventional, process of thinking, if you construct, destruction is there, So that brings the existing of arisings. If you, through the language you construct, if you conceive, or if you construct the idea of arising, and that proves the existing of the destructions. Now, the arising, the concept of arising that allows you to create or to bring the meaning of destruction, that very arising is if you dismantle objectively. So then what happens? If you, if you dismantle the idea of arising, it is not real, it is just fabrications. Then from that analysis, you cannot, you cannot find or you cannot construct the destructions. Sometimes it's like, sometimes, for example, what makes you see the color? What makes you hear the sound? The subject, the condition, what, in what condition you can, see the color, in what condition you can hear the sound. That conditions, like a very kind of, you're seeing something, you're seeing something through, the mass collection of atoms, through the mass collection of atoms. And then atoms, the collection of the atoms, it's, it's conjured. It tricks you to see. It tricks you to there's something to see as a color. It tricks you to something that there's something sound to hear. So in this trick, through this trick, yes, you can see the color, you can hear the sound, you can experience the smell and taste and tactilities. So if you kind of, if you're not seeing through this trick, if you're objective, and what is this mass collection of the atoms and molecules? And if you go with one by one, the atoms and what atoms, how atoms exist. Is it physical form? Yeah, it is the matter. It has the potential of occupying the area, the location. So then what atom makes, and then we go particles, quantum fields. So from that point of view, there is no physical things. There is no any solid things. There is no color. There's no sound. There's no smell. Just, quantum field. So I think this is kind of saying that if you, dismantle any objectivities, all the objective, there's no such objectifiable, which means you're not trying to see through. There's a trick, you're not trying to see through, the atoms' creations, atoms, the tricks. If you're not trying to see through that, you are looking into the atoms. And then probably there is no such thing as any hard thing, any soft thing, any cold, any heat. There's no such thing at all. So similarly in this from the point of view of when everything is absence of intrinsic property, intrinsic nature, and everything is just space as empty of intrinsic nature. From that point of view, arising is non-existent, and destruction does not exist. Coming is not exist. Going is not exist. And then, in what condition do you see the coming and going and east and west and short and tall? So you are seeing through one projection to another projections. First you create another projection through language, and that projections allows you to create another projections. So projections means it's not thought projection, it is creation. Through languages, through concept, you construct something, and then that allows you to construct another things. So this is called conventional reality. In the creation world, in projection world, and you can see, coming and going in east and west, north and south. So now that projections is saying that if things do exist by their own essence, short is always the short, tall is always the tall, and favorable, unfavorable, east and west is something substantial, and then there is, there's no space for the thought and language to project, because everything says east is substantial, solid there, west is substantial, solid, So when you go to the west, you only see the west. When you're coming from the west, you can only see the west until you reach the east. So when you go to the 10 freeway in Los Angeles, you're facing west. So you'll find everything in the west. When you're coming from the west to the east, driving towards the east, and from the Los Angeles to the wherever you're going, everything is in the east. That means allows you to create. You just rely on this creativities. So you just through that creations, and you can find if you face in the east, everything is east. If you face the west, everything is west. So that means you accept that creations. Once you accept one creation, that allows create many things, infinite. So this is what saying, if you stop creating and dismantling, everything is unreal. They unreal in the sense they are not objectified. They do not exist by their own essence. Which means you are not relying, you are not trying to see through creation. You are kind of looking into the reality. So with this subjective or, through this angle, you do not see anything that is arising, anything that has destroyed or destructed, anything that is east, anything that is west, anything that is tall or short. So that is impossible. So I think that's kind of here conventional and ultimate. So right now, when we touch the table, there's some kind of solid. Is you are trying to feel something through creation. What is the creation? The creation of your element. The element tricks you, create this kind of sense of hardness, and then that the table, any kind of electron or something, that against your electrons, then you feel. So that is the trick from the element, and then you allow that, you accept that trick is real, and then you can find something hard, something soft, something rough, and something, rough and soft, and in heat and cold, and all of them. So, so this is what's saying that when the perfect news sees that things comes from ignorance as condition, I think it's like when the perfect wisdom that is meditating on emptiness or in emptiness, and from that point of view, it's trying to see, is there anything coming from ignorance? Is there anything that called ignorance? Anything that called result of the ignorance as a karma or consciousness? And from the point of view of the wisdom that meditating on emptiness, see nothing, no ignorance, no result of ignorance. So nothing will then be objectified because it is totally absence of objectivity. So if there is no objectified, you have no name, you have no any idea, concept. So which means that the concept comes from when you objectified, when you identified in a single unit, as they mentioned, like, when you identified in single unit from the one single braid, you can separate its color, its smell, its taste, its textures. So you can, identify, you can distinct many, attributes from the one single braid. And that, separate attributions of that ones from the one single braid, it is not the creation of the braid. It is not there within the braid. It happens, when it braid contact with eye consciousness, nose tongue consciousness, body consciousness. Then, there's some kind of, you have experienced separately. Eye experience the color or shape, and nose experience only the smell, tongue experience only the taste, body experience only the tactilities, So then the thought comes, this color is single unit from the smell. Smell is single unit from the color, and smell is single unit. So all is single unit, defined in separate unit. So this kind of, if you if you identified and objectified in one single unit, then you can say, yes, the color of the braid and the smell of the braid, the taste of the braid, these are separate. What allows you to, what makes you believe they are separate is one, the main thing is your thought, your languages. And the second is what language has allowed to, distinct the, this color, smell, taste, texture of the one single braid is experienced separately. Eye experience, nose experience, tongue experience, body experience. So that is the base, and then language comes. And then so that separations of the color, smell, taste, texture of the one single braid happen to exist. It is the real to you. So so nothing will then be objectified either in terms of arising or the distractions. Sometimes it's very confusing when you read the stanzas, if there is no explanations, when the perfect news sees that things comes from ignorance as conditioned. So things comes from, what are the things? Karma and consciousness. Karma and consciousness comes from ignorance as a condition. As a condition. So that does not mean wisdom realizing emptiness, direct realization emptiness, the wisdom that meditative equipoise is actually seeing karma and consciousness as a result of the ignorance. So it's saying that, it cannot be seen. So that means the meaning, the definition of the condition, conditioning, relation, cause, is only conceived once you accept that creation, once you accept that, the conjurations of the language. So, and the same thing now, is also saying that, so right now you wish to attain liberations. You have a desire to attain the liberations, which means how say, you kind of, in what condition you wish the liberations. So in what conditions? Because you have accept that creation of ignorance, the creation of the ignorance, and that conjure, that that creates conjure, right? Conjure or it tricks you to see there is the suffering of the birth, suffering of the aging, suffering of the death. There is a suffering from things that you are not meeting what you want. Those sufferings are created by the ignorance. You accept that, accept that creation, and then you find, oh, this is the suffering. I want to free from suffering. This is almost like the man who is in the dream. He is chased by people who are trying to harm him. So in the dream he would keep running. So that the whole effort of running is by accepting this is the real. Whole effort of running, and then there's whole fears. What if they caught me? What if they caught me, and what happens after that? They may kill me, they may rob me. All these fears, all because you have accepted that the dream is the real. So, and there is some kind of desire that I want to get out from that. So, and the way you free from that fear in the dream, being chased by people, harmful people, being chased by harmful people, trying to harm you, and you are just running out of that, So, in the moment you understand, oh, I am dreaming. So then, that moment you are completely convinced this is whole dream, and then it just start to disappear in the fears, and just start to disappear seeing someone chasing you, or disappears you being chased by people, and then that means you are awake. So the liberation should be like that. Liberation is not physically two separate locations. Samsara and liberation is not two different places that you are trying to get out from one place to reach to another place. So samsara is no different from the liberations. Nirvana is no different from the samsara. It is the gap that created by your ignorance. And then you accept the creation of the ignorance as a real, and then you see that. So then right after that stanza also there's this is the transcendence of the sorrow. In this very life, one's task is complete. So this is the transcendence of the suffering. In this very life, one task is complete. So in this point, so this is transcendent suffering means, the very moment that you are meditatively equipoised in emptiness, within there you find the transcendental sufferings. So, the once you experience the freedom, total freedom from ignorance, total bondage of afflictive emotions, you've experienced that now you are totally free. So where do you see that transcendent suffering? Where do you experience the freedom from the suffering? So while you are in that moment, perfectly focus on that absence of intrinsic existence. So this is the transcendental sufferings in this very life. So it is no matter, within this life or the next life, or in the intermediate state, in proto state. Wherever the moment is while you are in that, single-pointedly focusing on the absence of intrinsic existence. So then, that is because of that, and you will have the experience of now my task of this life is complete. In Tibetan, the line there says, my whole effort, the actions from the effort is now complete. Now I don't have any action to accomplish. So like mission accomplished. So that's the final. So this is how the Arhat says, now I have complete my task. I have no effort or desire to become the rich. I have no desire to become famous. I have no desire to become, better or excellent. So because once your mind is totally set free from afflictive emotions, you have everything. So my task is complete. So after the knowledge of the truth, differentiations are, So now they're saying that if after the knowledge of the truth, the differentiations occur here. So this is quite, almost like, twisted, The writing is very, the Nagarjuna saying that after you see all of them, so you see nothing, no conventional reality in there. So what if, so how about if you see there's a differentiations occur, there's a big and short, there is someone who has achieved high ranking, someone's low, how this could be seen. So like, so when there is no, conventional, relatively existing, or language creations of arising and destructions is not seen, how can you see that someone's higher and someone's lower? Now it's very, very difficult to say, we cannot say the way we see things. We see color through the eye consciousness. We hear the sound from the ear consciousness, and it is obvious to us the color, sound is different, and smell and taste and the different, and taste and the tactility, the textures are the different, and things that we see with eye is different from things that you smell. So if we have some kind of confidence in that, the reality that is really, created before us, so we always being confident that this is the real. Now if you look from the point of view of the emptiness, what if things are not intrinsic? What if things are not intrinsic? If things not intrinsic, how can color could be intrinsic? If the color is not intrinsic, how color being different by itself from the smell? If the smell is not intrinsic, how the smell by itself not different from the color? Different from the color. How it is possible that, what you call the shadows hold your confidence, hold your, neck high attitude. So your whole total confidence is depleted now. So then what, so then you may kind of there's a how to say, then it start confusing. So if this is everything that I see, I experience, I witness as not real, and what is the real? If this is not real, does that mean they are not exist at all? It is exactly like people with eye disease sees every day their flies, flying there around their bodies, or eye disease will see, constantly falling their hairs. Is it the same? So then we understand, the hair falling, seen by someone with eye disease. So there is no hair falling. There is no relatively existing with hair falling. It is just because of one condition, that disease that that happens with your eye. That is only one condition. When disease is removed, when you cure from that disease, when your eye is free from that disease, the vision, the disease-free eye has no vision of hair falling, no seeing flying. So the color, color, smell, taste, textures, the separations of the colors, smell, taste, textures, even your art, you still see. So now that we see it is not just from one single cause. It is the creation of the element, is the creation of is magical illusions of the creation, magical illusion from the element level. And that element level means the consciousness also involved. Otherwise, if their consciousness not involved, is not playing in the role with element, and there is no kind of sensual object. There's no sensual object. So that's called, something that you cannot remove by, perfecting your mind. It is still, you can see that illusions that created, tricks of the element is always there. So that is called conventional relativities. Is also the constructions from the element level. So then, what is removing the suffering of the birth, suffering of the aging, suffering of the death, is totally not appearing. It is no longer is object to you. So these are the sufferings with object. Suffering suffering with the condition is totally cease to exist as it disappears in that emptiness. So that suffering is like, the hair falling from eye disease. Sufferings are, like people with eye disease seeing the hair falling and can't seeing the flies flying around your body. The suffering is, maybe you can say superimposed by your misknowledge or ignorance. So this is why, yes, once you tame your mind, subdue your mind, with this wisdom, you can end the suffering. So the wisdom is not going to destroy, destroy object, sensual object. The wisdom is not destroying the color, sound, and smell, and taste, and textures. Wisdom is destroying the suffering of the birth, aging, and death. So birth, aging, and the death, and the suffering of the birth, aging, and the death is not going to end the birth. So it is also going to end the birth in condition of suffering. So I think that's the so what I said is this Chandrakirti in the commentary, and he's also trying to, explain that. So stanzas number 10, yeah. When one discerns with precise intuitions. In Tudinjamas, when the perfect gnosis sees, so when I read this, so and then when I read the Tibetan, it says, and then this is, if I translate here, what is the complete task? How the Arhat sees no more task. How? And then it says, while you find the nirvana or transcend suffering in that emptiness, when you see the transcendent suffering, when you experience the freedom, when you focus in that emptiness, so you find that now all the task has completed. So when you this translation, when you see, it's almost like there's some kind of when you read this, it's almost like a perfect gnosis sees that things comes from ignorance and condition. That means, from the point of view of the emptiness, yes, there is things that are coming from ignorance. So Maritinji Chonla Yanta Sheben Namtanas. So Maritinji Chonla in Tibetan there's Maritinji Chonla Yanta Sheben Namtana. So first when you read the Tibetan Maritinji Chonlas, things means karma and consciousness, those 12 infant Tibetan originations, 11 of them derive from the ignorance. So 11 of them derive from ignorance. When you try to see that through the wisdom realizing emptiness, and then you don't see anything arising, anything destructions. Yeah, so let me read in the commentaries. In the phrase, what occurs, the condition by the misknowledge or the ignorance. So misknowledge refers to the prime condition of the sequence of the relativity seen in the direct experience of the object, such as creation and consciousness. So now they're saying that, whole 12 linked to different originations, the 11 are, originated from the ignorance. Ignorance is the root cause. So whole chain of that can be seen. And in what condition it can be seen? In the conventional. In the conventional perspective, yes, you can see whole chain of 12. And then says, in objective point of view, you cannot see. There is no 12 links. There is no chain of 12 links to different origination. There is no one thing that ignorance as the root and everything coming from it. It's like a water tank and the tap water is coming. It is, if you imagine that you can imagine that way, and if you try to see what is the objectively existing, and you don't see, there's the root and there's things that is coming from it. So this is all through the language it created. The sequence of relative is seen with direct, at that time, this in the relativities, from the perspective of the relativities, the objects such as karma and consciousness, and so forth. Karma and consciousness, name and form, faculties, contact, feeling, craving, grasping, whole line, whole chain of that can be seen. If objects such as creation means the action, karma, which arises conditioned by the misknowledge or the ignorance, were intrinsically established. If that is the karma that conditioned by ignorance is intrinsically established, it intrinsically exists, they could not depend on the conditions such as misknowledge. Then it is like, the eggs born from the chicken. Now, egg is no longer existing and depending on chicken. You can just grab the egg and leave the chicken there. So, if the karma and ignorance is like chicken and egg, mother and child, it's two different, physical different, then, so you cannot say that the karma is depending on ignorance. Since they would be established in terms of their intrinsic identity, in that case, for example, intrinsically identifiable things, such as pot. So now saying that, so then it should be like a, apple and orange, apple and orange. And then if it's single, is identified in single unit, it is solid and concrete existing, it's different from each other, then it's almost like a pot would be perceived perfectly clearly in terms of their essential natures. You look at the pot, not looking at the other things. It's very clear to you. So then, when the darkness of the obscurations no longer exists, in the light, you see the pot. Something imagined by someone with eye disease because of the particular conditions. So then, karma is something that is different from ignorance. Ignorance is different from the karma. So this is it's whole 12 links to divine originations is like physically, substantially lined up, Then, and then maybe you have to, if you want to end the samsara, if you want to destroy the samsara, you have to go with one by one. First, I fight ignorance, defeatance, destroyed ignorance, and the karma is still there. And then you go after karma, and you go after consciousness. So it is like that, Because the pot, the pot, table, flowers, everything is, physically separate. So you destroy one by one. So this kind of seeing the 12 links and divine originations and separate and independent from each other, different from each other, is kind of, something that imagine with eye disease because of the particular conditions is cognized as a falling hair and so forth. And the hair falling and the fly that you see, so forth. And yet has no essential natures. Yet no essential natures. And does not appears, so those things that you see with eye disease have no essential natures. Because of that, does not appear to those with perfect clear visions. So things that you see with eye disease are not seen by clear visions. So it's kind of like comparing that, the Nagarjuna, the Chandrakirti is saying, there is no, and objectively, there is no chain of the 12 of the divine origination. There is no samsara that is different from the nirvanas. But with that eye disease, you can see the hair falling. So with ignorance, you can see whole 12 links and divine originations different from each other. They are physically, substantially lined up in order. Perfectly clear vision. Just so, intrinsically established things which are imagined in just such a manner, like falling here, cannot be established as existing like real here and so forth. Similarly, if these creations, these karma and so forth, whole 12 linked to divine originations, were intrinsically established, then even noble individual whose correct intuitions comes from the determining the meaning of the truth, understanding the ultimate truth, and that wisdom, the clear vision of that, would see their intrinsic identity as inviolable, as something that is unbreakable, something that is indestructible. They are really solid there. So now saying, do Arhat, the noble beings, from their wisdoms, from their point of view, the wisdom point of view, there is no really the chain of the 12 independent originations. Identity inviolable, and would perceive things such as part as existing in accordance with its appearance. If it were reasonable for them to be such object, there would be no scriptural statement like, since the misknowledge has ceased, emotions have ceased. So, and then if these are, as you see through what language has constructed for you, the 12 links are chained up, in a different, different phenomena, different cause and conditions, So if this is the real, as language has created, constructed for you, then Buddha cannot say by overcoming ignorance, all the emotional cease to exist. So Buddha have to say, if you remove ignorance, then you have to go after the karma to remove it. If you remove the karma, then you have to go after the consciousness. So Buddha did not say, by overcoming ignorance, all the negative emotions cease to exist. All the karma cease to exist. So that is not possible. Yet since when perfect insight dawns, like the hair seen by those with eye disease, an intrinsic identity does not appear. When the perfect insight dawns, when you gain wisdom realizing emptiness, directly observing in the emptiness, when this, wisdom happen to occur within the mind, and then, all these 12 links or 12 links that depend originations, the mutually different from each other is not seen. From that perspective, there is no such things as language has created and constructed. So the intrinsic identity does not appear. Intrinsically identifiable existence cannot be established. So I think that's the people whose faith is relying on, linguistic creations. So they cry, they kind of generate strong faith in crying and confessed, So all this looks very sincere and serious. But, their whole, emotionals is expressing on that, linguistic creations or cultural creations, culture that actually it is emotionals, that projects things through culture, traditions, and linguistics. So their whole seriousness, their whole confessions, their whole trust is actually on the base of that projections. So maybe it's kind of it's a positive things, but this is not really, it is not the really actual, method to free the individual from suffering. It is, it is like, the person who is in a dream, he was chased by, many people trying to harm him, and he finds this place to hide, This is like almost religious, the way of thinking is like, they find a small place to hide. And then, again, there's fear. What if they find me? So fear is not gone away. But you just, make yourself, you create yourself for the comfort. But still, the fear is not going away. So all the fears can be removed, and instantly when you see things like as it is. Yeah, this is also kind of Chandrakirti's the understandings, Nagarjuna and Chandrakirti's understanding is really kind of a little bit uh, beyond religious perspective. So within the Buddhist religions, religions has, because it is, it has successfully, helped people to bring some kind of comfort and calm for temporarily, for so all this becomes just the excuse. So not really benefiting, but this is like in the people fighting in the boxing ring, and then his helper says, "No pain, no pain." So he has whole bruises on the face, but no pain, no pain. So this religious idea is like that. There's no different. No fear. Don't afraid. You keep beating yourself. So you say, "Oh yeah, I accept that." So we keep saying, "Oh, meditate, recite mantra." But still the fear, the whole suffering is still with you. But still, it's something is better than nothing. At least you have something to chew on, So this is the commentary on the stanzas number 10. Hence, when the intuitions that does not perceive intrinsically real and action and destructions, creation, arising of the destructions, of any dependent arising things. So, which means, yes, there is, dependent arising. There's a relatively arising, relatively destructions. I think if you, try to, how is that? Untangle, that me unfolding, because we have, when we listen, the Chandrakirti Nagarjuna is commenting on what is arising and what is, destructions. Chandrakirti and Nagarjuna both saying relatively, yes, there is arising, and relatively, yes, there is destructions, which means relatively there is the birth, relatively there is the death. So, that, by just listening, hearing that, oh, Nagarjuna is accepting as I believe. No. As I have been believing, so Nagarjuna is not really, going there. So it's relatively. So first, many ordinary people, when they think about the birth and death, and some degree that the birth is something you know, some people imagine birth, people who believe in many life. So when they think about the birth, so they're born means, they just came from previous life into this. Now uh, so reincarnate. People don't believe in the many life, so they're just born from the flesh. It's a piece of flesh. So some piece of flesh from the mothers in the, so so that the birth means coming from somewhere. This is what we think. And when we think of the death, so many ordinary people, death means, that's end. That's END, end. So, when Nagarjuna says, yes, there's a relative to death, so it's not accepting, it's not saying as you believe. First, if there is the death that you believe is absolute death. So no, it is the end, means absolute. Death is independent by itself. It is nothing to do with birth. So when you think about the time of the death, so if the death is absolute, by itself, is nothing to do with the birth. So no connection with birth. There's no any meaning in that, meaning of the death. There is no birth at all. So when we think about the, like day by days, day ends, day, next day happens. So there is no absolute, absolute death of the day. There is no absolute, end of the day. So when the Friday ends in 12 midnight, and 1 second, that moment is the beginning of the Saturday. End of the Friday is in the birth of the Friday. So it is still in a half. Death is no different from the birth. When the body seed cease to exist, that end of the body seed is not, dissipations, not, there's no absolute the cessation of the seed. The seed, when its moment it ceases to exist, it leaves its identity. It lost its identity. That moment, sprout has manifested. So there is no absolute end of the seed. The end of the seed is the birth of the sprout. So what you have been believing in that death is the end, that is not true. Therefore, there is no absolute truth. So then if there is no absolute truth, and what is the death? So there is no such thing as only the death. And how this death is, that the life that you live as no longer existing with that relations is death. The moment, very minute, the death happened, that minute, the birth has happened. So it's relatively, the life that you had, or you have lived, is no longer continuing, therefore it is called death. But you are not completely ended or dissipated or discontinued. You still, that moment of the death, you are also continued. So the relative death is with relation to the life that you had, you had lived. That is no longer continuing. That is no longer existing. So that is the why it says death. So relatively, yes, death is there. The relatively, yes, there's the birth, something born, something happened, something occurred. So now the occurrence of any effect, it is so in the occurrence, the kind of the linguistic, the definitions occurs. So something came, right? So then it came from where? So that is again very difficult. Something occurred from where? So just before it, it never exists. It never exists. How can it come from there? So this is why, in the relatively, yes, arising, one sees that, the cause is ceased to exist, the effect, the arise and manifest, with relation to that, this happened. That died, therefore this happened. So it occurs, it arises, it's arisen. So it's relatively, you can, posit the existing of the arising. Absolutely, there is nothing come. So, sometimes the confident is good, sometimes is confident in the misknowledge is very it itself is big to obscurations to see things reality. So the confused is better. Confused may try to want to their desire to want to know. So confidence is struck. Well, this is what I see. So I prefer confusions. So stanzas number 11. So that is immediate nirvana. Immediate nirvana, and that very thing is attaining the goal. In Tridijima translations, so this is the transcendence of the sorrow. So this is transcendence of the sorrow. So in this very life, this is the transcendence of sorrow in this very life. So instead of saying here, attaining the goal, and then she says, once task is complete. So one task is complete. Now you have no desire to prove, desire to gain, desire to be something, desire to have something. Your mind is, totally free, from all kind of suffering. So when you desire to be something, desire to have something, desire to become something, so desire to achieve something, you have some kind of, dissatisfactions, dissatisfied what you have, what you are. That's why you want to, move from the lower to the higher state. So that once you attain nirvana within this life, this very life, so and then your task is complete. So this is two different translations. Different translation means there's the wordings are different. So that changed the meaning too. So when I read it in Tibetan, usually Tong means seeing, seeing. Like almost like seeing Dharma. You experience the transcendental suffering while you see the Dharma. So while you see, what is that? What is that? What is that thing that you see when you experience the transcendental suffering? Or what is that thing you experience the transcendental suffering? What is that thing that you see? So So this seeing is according to the traditional translations, he interpret that while you are seeing, while you are alive. While you are alive. This is sometime in the text that mention about the karmic result, how the karmic result manifest. And sometimes it says, means within this life the karmic result experience. This is what we said, So within this life you experience the karmic result, or you experience the karmic result in the next life or the next life. So So this is a little different, means. And so, when do you experience this transcendent suffering, while you're seeing the Dharma? So now this Dharma is, according to the Rice Seating Sutra, it says, Bhikshu, whoever sees the dependent origination sees the Dharma. Whoever sees the Dharma sees the Buddha. So that seeing is, through understanding the dependent originations that allows you to see the emptiness, the cessation of the suffering, the emptiness. So through that emptiness, you also see the possibility of the liberations. So that seeing is not very live, because it's a little bit confusion, because sometimes that's very word that used in a different context, and then in a different subject. So we still use the Tongchu. Here the Tongchu is not very live. So, but you can still understand from the commentary. So I think here it says, in this very life, when the yogi and yoginis attained intuition wisdoms, which does not perceive any real things, that reality is, immediate nirvana. Immediate nirvana. And just the attainment of that goal is precisely what is referred to as attaining goal. Yeah. So the commentary is, so let me. So in this, when you read Tsendinila Nenjobati, so in Tibetan it says Tsendinila. So this very life, yogi, who meditate directly meditate, meditate in emptiness of intrinsic existence. That times too, that very time, you see the transcend of suffering. So when you read the Tibetan line, it's like that. So first there's this very life, the yogi, while he's alive, he meditates in emptiness. And while he's meditating in emptiness, that very moment, and he sees the transcend of suffering. So that is, how is a perfect state, relevant to the Right Sealing Sutra. The bhikshu who sees the dependent originations sees the Dharma. Who sees the Dharma sees the Buddha. So Dharma here is Dharma that we say, I go for refuge to the Dharma. So that Dharma is, so all the afflictive emotions, the seed of the afflictive emotion disappearing in the emptiness. So that's cessations, that is no different from the emptiness. There you see, now there is possible of total end of all the afflictive emotions. So this is like almost like one who is hungry for, several days. Now he start eating. He said, now I'm going to be okay. So while he's eating, so he see that possible of, freedom from hunger. So not first spoon is not experienced, but he sees that this is going to happen.
But you can still call it nirvana.
Yeah, so it's in the process of nirvana. So you see. So, that nirvana is also experienced while you are seeing this emptiness cessations. So Tonachila Nyangadeva means, I think there's a mistake because in Tibetan lines from the beginning it said, this very life. And this very life, related to the meditator, the yogi and the yoginis. And then says, yogi and yoginis, when they meditate in emptiness, while in that emptiness, they find the cessations, there you find nirvana, transcendent suffering. So, so this is a little bit. So so Joseph translations, it says that is immediate nirvana. That is immediate nirvana. And that very thing is attaining goal. So this always, so educated people, they're very, very attracted to the words, sometimes they miss seeing what is beyond that word, what is, the fortunate thing is I'm not educated, so I'm not attracted to the words. So education is one of the obstacles for us. So education's, so some, only linguistic, the good at, wordings, So this whole teachings is every meanings is something that is cannot be, catch or create or cannot be really kind of brings you just from the word languages. Languages are just the tools, So when I read the so then it says, this very life, the yogini who meditate in emptiness, that moment, when you see that the emptiness, the cessation of, the emptiness, that very moment, moment that you are seeing or meditating on the emptiness, directly observing, and there you find transcendent sufferings. So therefore, this is that's the very nature. The quality is, it is the complete task. So the complete task means, So now this kind of gives you meaning. Like for example, the task is completed. So if this yogi, and while he's staying in his room, so there is possible of the dust. He need to complete. He need to how it's called clean. He need to wipe the tables. There are some task. So now this thing, that very moment you find transcendental suffering, that is called complete task. Yeah. It's not like now you don't have to, wash your dishes. So, so I think this is kind of very, very, something that's trying to explain to us that we never thought about. So why? Because we have strongly believed in, believe in our perceptions. Our perceptions is, created or structure from the languages and culture, the traditions, and many times it's from the habit. So, this cannot be digested in that, belief systems. So, so you have to see things, try to see things beyond that ordinary perceptions. Then you understand why the Nagarjuna is saying, ultimately there is no arising, there is no destructions, there is no coming and going, there is no east and west, there is no short and tall. And then it says, relatively. So with this, what you follow through the languages, what you follow through mental constructions, from there, yes, of course, you can see, you can understand arising and arising the destructions. And you can also see in the whole Buddha's teachings about 12 links and dependent origination, the real chain of the 12 links are there. If you see through the language, the structures of the languages, you can see that. So that, that whole chain of the 12 links of dependent origination and samsara and nirvana as separate, two unit, this all you can picture from that perspective of the conventional or the linguistic perspective. And then said, after that, saying that, this whole conventional realities to, to perceive, to understand, you have to see things through linguistic structures, the languages projections. There you can see all this, the east and west, north and south, short and tall, east, all the favorable, unfavorable, even the Four Noble Truths as a four, So there's Four Noble Truths are in the order you can see, from the structures of the languages. But, but if you try to see the objectively, you cannot find there is Four Noble Truths. There is Tuvaling to dependent originations as a chain. You cannot see there is nirvana and the samsara is something two separate phenomena. So this is why I'm saying that, if your consciousness is trying to see through the whole, the mass collections of the element as a one whole mass collections, consciousness seeing through that, you can see many things. So those are, magically created through the mass collection of the atoms in the whole form. The consciousness seeing through, whole collections. If you go deep into each of the atoms and the particles and see, and there's nothing to see as a color and smell and taste and the textures. There's nothing. The only you can find, maybe sometimes the quantum field and the time, which means space and the time. There's nothing. I think this is also the most difficult part, accepting both world, in a very more settled world, and then more, conventional, the creation of the elements and the consciousness. Something they're constantly creating, construct, So if this is, as long as this is mind consciousness, floating or accepting or enjoying, entertain, with this, the elements, So that element's called constituents. So they accept, as the consciousness desire, and consciousness also enjoy, entertain, and as the element has created. So that's called constituents. It's like, the Senate and the constituents of the voters. So they kind of agree together. I vote you, you do things, something I really like. So the consciousness, that's kind of is called constituents. The element is also not pure, playing, accordance with the nature. And elements is playing according to the mind, the consciousness. So that is the constituents of the element. So the Buddha is free from constituents of the element, free from, this, pumbo, condition of suffering, it's constituents elements. The constituents elements, is something to do with your, mental attitude, mental habituations. So if there are habituations, constantly repeating habits, and elements also playing as as your habit, as the habit. So this constituents the elements, and the function of that is also, you can see that activities with arhats. Any questions? I think the Tibet Tonchel and dance. Chawachema Tinyetos. Tonchel and dance. You attain the transcendent sufferings, while you are seeing, which means while you're seeing directly the emptiness. Is not seeing while you are alive. No questions? Okay. Chanju Zemjo Remboje, Majeba, Jeba Nyamba, Meva, Kone Kondo, Pewajo, Tonya Tawa Remboje, Majeba, Jeba Nyamba, Meva, Kone Kondo, Pewajo, Pama Simjan, and the dead and danger, and the Retam Jatala Tova, Chanju Semba Kana Sushu, Tadago, Molum Juju, Carrera Robo, which was the Panda, the woman who drove it, Jerezon, Dindy, Shabesida,
May the precious body mind not yet born arise and grow. May the bone have no decline but increase forevermore. May the precious mind realizing emptiness not yet born arise and grow. May the bone have no decline but increase forevermore. Due to all these merits, may all Father and Mother sentient beings have all the happiness, and may all lower realms be empty forever. Wherever there are bodhisattvas, may all their prayers be accomplished immediately. In the sacred land surrounded by snow mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. O powerful Intrinsic I, remain in this world until samsara ends.
Thank you.